Hello, everyone. Cecil Martin here.
Hey, this is Hunter Henry.
What's up, man? This is Max Crosby, part of Raider Nation.
Hey, this is Ross Tucker, former NFL offensive lineman.
Hey, it's Tyler Lockett of the Seattle Seahawks.
Hey, this is Jerry Judy, wide receiver for the Denver Broncos, and you're listening to the 14-Yard NFL Podcast.
We have an NFL game in London again this week, and I don't know about you, but I can't wait. Hello and welcome back to the 14 Yards NFL podcast. I'm your host, Sam Moores, and the NFL London games are in full swing now. And joining me to recap an eventful opening game between the Jets and the Vikings and look ahead to this weekend's matchup between the Jaguars and Bears is someone who quite literally wrote the book on the UK's relationship with the sport. Senior US sports writer for The Mirror and The Express, and author of the special relationship, the history of American football in the UK. He is, of course, Andrew Gamble. Welcome onto the podcast, mate.
Appreciate you for having me on, man. I mean, I've definitely listened to the show before, but I got to say the intro is awesome. That is fantastic. Listening to that all the way through. It's a pleasure to be on, man. I really appreciate you asking me to come on.
Do you know what? You're definitely not the first guest that has said that. We've had it quite a lot over the last couple of years that I've been doing that. It was here before I started. It's been here for a long time. I inherited it, and I quite like the intro too. So it is a nice thing to have. This is a really good time to be a UK NFL fan. It's like Christmas, really, having all these games week after week for the next couple of weeks, and then we have the Germany game as well in a couple of weeks after that. And for everyone around, it is a nice time. Obviously, we had Christian Wade on the podcast last week. It was nice to speak to him. Obviously, a UK rugby player who went to the NFL and knows what it's all about, the sport, haven't played it, and now we get you on, which is it's a great as a sports journalist myself. It's nice to have someone who knows what I'm in the process of doing at the minute, and hopefully next year we'll be working together and everything after I graduate. It's awesome to have you on, and it's awesome to be talking ball. There's only one place to start, really. As promised last week, we're going to be talking about the state of the NFC too, after going through the AFC last week. But first, let's start with the big news of the week, because we're just 5 games into the NFL season and we already have our first coach firing, as Robert Saleh is out as the Jets head coach. And that came after the Minnesota Vikings held on to beat them 23-17 at Spurs on Sunday. I was there. Stephon Gilmore intercepted Aaron Rodgers deep into the fourth quarter to ice a game that Minnesota were firmly in control of for a lot of the game. Their defense intercepted Rodgers 3 times, including Andrew Van Ginkel's pick 6 to open the scoring. But after losing Aaron Jones midway through the game, the momentum changed a little bit, and it did bring the Jets back into it. They earned themselves an Aaron Rodgers 2-minute drill to win the game, but Gilmore's acrobatic interception inside the 10 ended things, gave the Vikings their 5th win of the season after a miscommunication between Rodgers and Mike Williams, one of many miscommunications between Rodgers and receivers in this game, and it's been a theme for the Jets all season. And presuming they had the day off on Monday, which normally happens after a big travel, and also because they got Monday Night Football this week, Robert Saleh walked straight into the building on Tuesday and was fired straight away. Was informed to be dismissed pretty much as soon as he got into the building. There's reports that he didn't even get to adjust the team, but we don't know if they're true or not. And then since then as well, offense coordinator Nathaniel Hackett today has since been demoted from his play calling duties too. Now, I've been a huge critic of Saleh since last season, and this firing is kind of deserved with the way this team has been out-coached again this year. And I think that's the thing. It's not the way they've won 2 games, but the games that they've lost, they've been manhandled in a lot of the time, and that has been an issue for the Jets. But this is really strange timing. Only 1 game back. If they beat the Bills on Monday Night Football, they will take the lead of the AFC East, and they're the first coach. This is the first team to fire their coach. What do you make of this?
It's interesting because I've kind of liked kind of the way I guess the Robert Saleh carries himself, the way that the defense has played for the Jets. I mean, obviously last season they kind of carried that franchise with with Rodgers out and the offense being led by Zach Wilson, they kind of got a pass, I think, which is why I think this year, it's particularly the pressure was on, right? Like with Rodgers fit in the team, and they've been waiting so long for this. It feels like it was almost like a powder keg kind of brewing this whole time. And from people I've spoken to as well, I think it's just more of a culture thing. To be honest, I think Salah's kind of been using the Rodgers injury as kind of a get out of jail free card kind of last year. This year, obviously, they had a lot more expectation. And you heard Rodgers say it as well on the Pat McAfee show yesterday, as he likes to do. We heard him talking about how he wanted certain players to be held accountable, and whether Salah was the man to do that or not, I guess he wasn't, because he's out the door. But as you say, from the outside perspective, it's abrupt. It's 5 games into the season. As you say, if they win on Monday night, they're leading the AFC East, which we all thought would be a pretty competitive division outside the Patriots going into the season. And it's looking like one of the weaker divisions as the season kind of unfolds, which is surprising. But I think definitely interesting that he's gone ahead of this Monday night game. It shows how much, I guess, kind of pressure they're putting on the Monday night game against Buffalo. Because if they lose that game, obviously they're then 2 games back. So I guess that's how they looked at it. They wanted to make a change first. I'm surprised. I think I'm more surprised by the fact they didn't make an offensive change before firing Salah. Changing the OC. Now they've done it and brought in, given play calling to Todd Downing. But I would have expected that change to be made first, given of course, because the defense has played incredibly well. So, we saw them last week, obviously struggled in the first half. Obviously Rodgers threw a pick 6 as well, but the adjustments they made at halftime brought the Jets back into the game. The offense managed to get going as well, and they looked much improved. But yeah, the wild ride that is the Jets kind of continues, and will be one of the biggest storylines kind of going through the season. So insane news. But to summarize, I guess Robert Saleh, he's shown he's an incredible defensive mind, right? So he'll have no doubt, he'll have no shortage of suitors come the end of the year for a DC role, I imagine. Whether he can then rebuild his image and still believe he can be a head coach remains to be seen. But yeah, he's clearly a great defensive mind, because we've seen that Jets defense dominate now for at least kind of 18 months. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see where he goes from here. It'll be interesting to see where the Jets go from here.
Yeah, absolutely. It is a bold move. It may work. We'll see what happens with Jeff Ulbrich taking temporary charge the rest of the season. The season is very much still alive. And you mentioned it there, the way with this game coming up, so that the Jets played the Bills really well last year, but against everyone else in the division, and normally against the Bills as well, they have struggled. That's what been the major weakness under Robert Saleh, is the fact that his record in division is terrible, 4-14, which is quite a percentage lower than his record against non-AFC's teams. Yeah. That has been a big problem. So this game now, I can see from that point of view, where if you think you are probably in the same direction, maybe this win this win could decide the division the way it's going. So from that aspect, I kind of get the move. But again, changing everything. Sometimes this works. We saw it with the Raiders last year of Antonio Pierce, turned that team around. We saw it with Rich Bisaccia as well after John Gruden left the Raiders. Again, 2 different examples there, but with the same team. But the interim coaches can find some success. So we'll see what happens there, because as you mentioned, it's very much been the offense has been the problem. The Salah's defense, and Ulbrich, who many people believe has a big role in that defense, has been brilliant. So we'll see if that can continue with Salah out the building. Minnesota, on the other hand, well, they've managed. You're obviously wearing the Vikings top there. They've maintained their unbeaten start, going into their bye at 5-0. Both Kevin O'Connell and Brian Flores are favourites for their respective Coach of the Year awards. Their offense didn't have the best of days, but it did enough in the first half, and it was Brian Flores' defense that won another game against top opposition. What a great time for Vikings fans right now.
Oh, 100%. It's incredible. You watch that. The defense is particularly amazing, because I'm a big Danielle Hunter guy, right? I think he's been one of the best defensive ends, kind of one of the most underrated players in football, really, for the last 6-7 years. So when he left in free agency and joined the Texans, I really thought at least the Vikings pass rush would take a step back. But they've got guys in. They're so well coach. They disguise their fronts so effectively. And all these different guys are stepping up as well. You got Josh Metella, so I think he's having an unbelievable season. Andrew Van Ginkel, of course, got the pick 6 on Sunday. He is having an even better season, and Harrison Smith is still going. So, and then bring in Stephon Gilmore. It's incredibly well run defense, and then obviously look this team kind of starts at the top with Kevin O'Connell, who is rapidly surging to the top of the NFL kind of coaching pyramid, in terms of who do we think is the best in the league. He is unbelievable. I think some people call him the tall Sean McVay. So like what he's doing with Sam Darnold in that offense, they have playmakers as well. I mean, it's a great situation, really well run offense. And it's a great time to be a Vikings fan. I think, you see these, I think the last 2 times I think a team was 5-0 and didn't make the playoffs were both the Minnesota Vikings. So we'll keep fingers crossed that maybe they'll get the job done. But I mean, it's a competitive division, the NFC North. I think every team there has a winning record, right? So it's an unbelievable division. We'll see how it kind of pans out. But yeah, I mean, I don't think anyone would have thought the Vikings were 5-0 through 5 weeks this season, even the wildest fans. So I think it's certainly a great time to be in Minnesota and bleeding purple and whatnot. And very cool for the London fans to see them in action in London, because they're obviously they're one of the best and certainly most interesting teams to watch this season. So it's cool that they got to come over.
Yeah, and they're also one of the teams that invests very heavily in the UK market as well. So they've certainly got their marketing's worth in for that game alone, as well as obviously the start of the season. I've said every week I feel like I'm a massive fan of Brian Flores. I think even his big knock was the way the offensive side of the ball, but like Salah in New York, to be fair, looked in Miami, because from everything I've heard and read and people I've spoken to, it was pretty much neglected, and then there was the whole horrible human being thing with Tua as well. But he's now got his guys on defense, whether it's Van Ginkel, who played his best football under Flores in Miami, Gilmore, who got Defensive Player of the Year with Flores in his year in New England, where he called plays. And Josh Metellus is someone who stood with him and is very much a Flores guy. He was one of the people who stood with him in his press conference after the whole Tua interview a couple of months back as well. So these are Flores' guys, and they're the ones that are making plays as well. So he certainly earned himself a head coaching job, and it's really nice to see that defense again, because it was so good to watch in its time in Miami with the freaky fronts, and watching everyone dance over the line of scrimmage on 3rd down. It's just like, it's nice to see it back and thriving in the league. Anyway, let's turn attention to the second London game now, where we will return to Spurs to see the Jags and Bears attempt to get their seasons going. Both teams will be very disappointed with the way the year starts. Very different records, but I think they both are disappointed with the way the season started compared to their expectations. The Jags were sitting at 0-4 ahead of last week, and the Bears were 2-2 ahead of last week, and struggling offensively, and that was a key with Chicago. But they both head into this game off a win, and in Chicago's case, 2 in a row, which was great for them because they certainly had playoff aspirations. Now, the Bears are the home team for this fixture before heading into a bye week, whilst this will be the first of 2 games for the Jags in London, acting as the away team in this one before their organised home game at Wembley next week against the Patriots. We'll start with the Bears. We'll look at them first before going into the Jags. They're in a very unique position going into this one, because despite a lot of negativity surrounding the team, they are over 500, which sort of took me by surprise, just obviously because I know they were. But when you look back at it, you're like, how would the Bears, how do they have a winning record? Because all you're hearing is negativity about this offense, and it's because their defense is really good. It was great the second half of last year after they made the trade to bring in pass rushers and everything, and it's carried on that form. It's top 5 in both yards per play allowed, which is a good metric, because obviously some teams have played more games than others, so that's the sort of, for defense, that's probably quite a good metric to look at. And also percentage of drives ending in a score. So obviously, red zone defense and 3rd down defense and everything. They're top 5 in that metric as well. They've also produced 11 turnovers this season, 3rd most. They're top 10 in quarterback hits, and they're 3rd in defensive EPA too. So while the offense, led by rookie Caleb Williams, has struggled so far this year, they've been in most games, and that is because of this defense. And they're frisky heading into this one, because last week we saw that Bears offense take a step. Now, it was Caleb's best game of the season so far. 304 yards, 2 touchdowns, and a whopping 3.5 yards per attempt, higher than in any other game this season. So pushing the ball downfield as well. But obviously, you may say the Panthers suck. So, but the thing that makes me bash that is the fact that he did this, that performance mostly by himself, because the Bears still do not have a run game. And his receivers really aren't helping him out this year as well. They've been quite disappointing. So yeah, how are we feeling about Chicago? Because a win on Sunday will send them to the bye at 4-2, a really good position to be in. But because of their lack of tough opponents on their schedule and the way they've looked, it doesn't really feel real that could be a possibility.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was the first 2 games of the season were particularly alarming. They somehow won that game against Tennessee to open the season. That's probably one of the craziest games I think anyone, certainly I've seen in a long time. And the NFL stirs up crazy games every week. So, I mean, as you say, right, they're carried by the defense at the moment. Maybe not carried by the defense, but they're a defensive team. I think what has really hurt the Bears from a outside perspective, kind of watching on, is just the hype that they received, right? And Caleb Williams received. Look, he's a great player, but like let's call a spade, right? Like he's still a rookie, so he's not gonna come in and be the savior straight away. But people bought into that, right? As they should, right? Like, because you're optimistic about the future, you're optimistic about what could happen. That's why we watch sports, right? Is to get excited. So. I'm not going to begrudge anyone of that, but at the same time, he was handed some ridiculous expectations. There were some people on, like Fox Sports and stuff saying that they were going to the Super Bowl. Absolutely wild. So, look, he has improved every game, which I think if you're a Bears fan, you're taking, right? He's a rookie quarterback. So, obviously, Jaden Daniels has had an unbelievable start to his career, and that's obviously what Caleb will be compared to. But look, he's improved every game, as you said. Last game against the Panthers, whose pass defense last season was pretty good, surprisingly. This year is middling, but look, he pushed the ball downfield, like you said. He hit DJ Moore for a couple of with the touchdown, which was one of his throws was particularly fantastic. I think it's a good game, right? It's a good game it's a good time. I think it's another good team for London fans to watch, right? You get Caleb Williams, the number 1 overall pick, one of the most hyped players in a long time, who is starting to play better. Thank God the Jags won against the Colts to make that game a bit more interesting. I mean, I guess we'll talk about them in a sec. But the Bears, I think they're getting there. I think it's, like you say, if they win this game on Sunday, they move to 4-2. Whether they make the playoffs at the end of the year, who knows? But that's an unbelievable start. I think through 6 games, 4-2 with a rookie quarterback, is exactly what Bears fans really would have wanted. The offensive line is still not great. The run game showed some life against the Panthers, but again, it's against the Panthers. It's difficult to know what's what in that regard. So, look, I think they're definitely a defensive kind of led team, but that offense is brewing, and hopefully as the season unfolds, maybe in London as well on Sunday. Hopefully, as the season unfolds, we'll start to see what everyone, maybe not what the Fox Sports people were expecting, but what everyone else was kind of expecting, which was a fun offense to watch, an exciting offense to watch, which is what we saw on Sunday.
Yeah, I certainly think the fact that they obviously drafted a quarterback number 1 overall, someone with the caliber of Williams, obviously Heisman Trophy winning quarterback and everything, and then also being the Hard Knocks team coming into the year as well. Yeah. That's everyone's watching them in the building, everyone's seeing these speeches of Eberflus and seeing Williams be a big part of that series. Then there's a lot of hype coming into the season when you make your predictions, and that does happen a lot of the time. For that reason, this is a good standalone national TV game for everyone to find out where this team are at, which is great for Bears, and it's great for the national and international in our case perception of the Bears. Meanwhile, the Jags, they're at a crossroads this season really, because it's been a major disappointment so far. Obviously, starting the year 0-4, coming short in 4 one-score games, which is really disappointing when your team loses 4 one-score games. And there's certainly a problem there. But obviously, before winning the one last week against the Colts, where Trevor Lawrence had one of, if not his best day in the NFL, an awesome day for him. It was also an awesome day for Joe Flacco on the other side. It was one hell of a game that game last week. But the good news is that Lawrence looked good for the Jags, and it was because he was finally protected. The Jags O-line allowed just one pressure last week, whereas the rest of the season he's been running around for his life. And that's great ahead of this game for them. For a London crowd, a big investor in the UK market, of course, the Jaguars are. 2 number 1 overall pick quarterbacks coming off arguably their best games in the league. And a sign for hope for Jags fans that Lawrence, who obviously they paid $55 million to this offseason, can be who was drafted to be. All they got to do is protect him. We saw a glimpse of that last week where they can, what Lawrence, when protected, can be who he was drafted to be.
Yeah, I think for sure. I mean, I think a big part of that as well was the run game finally got going. I mean, Travis Etienne has had a bit of a difficult start to the season. I think people were calling for him to be benched already, which is crazy because obviously he's been a pretty dominant, or at least a productive back throughout his NFL career. And Tank Bigsby came in, had an awesome day. I mean, that first touchdown was absolutely ridiculous, breaking the tackles. And I think that's what helps Lawrence, right? Like, it takes the pressure off him, like having that stable run game to lean on, and mix it up with the against the defense as well. So that'll obviously help and play into Trevor Lawrence's confidence. Yeah, you're right. He had a much better day because he struggled right so far to get Christian Kirk, who was fantastic last season, has really struggled this year. I mean, the whole Jags offense really has been poor. Gabe Davis, another big signing, hasn't done much. Look, Brian Thomas has been excellent. We'll say that for sure. And he's looking like he's going to be the number 1 receiver, if not he already, if he isn't already. So, I mean, I think it's just Trevor Lawrence getting more to grips with his offense. Obviously, when you're getting paid that much money, you'd expect him, or you'd want him to come in and hit the ground running from week 1. But look, I mean, if the Jags can get some momentum going and get a win on Sunday, that'd be huge, right? Like, coming in, winning in London, obviously it's kind of their home, the London Jaguars. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see how Trevor how he plays on Sunday, especially after last week, because it was a duel with Flacco, which is ridiculous that we're saying that in 2024. What a testament to Joe Flacco. But I mean, it was a great game. It was an absolute shootout. And Trevor Lawrence was showing why he's the number 1 pick and why he was paid so much money earlier this offseason. So yeah, I mean, we'll see on Sunday. Hopefully he can continue that.
Yeah, I think they're expected to get Evan Ingram back for this game as well. Obviously, a big part of that offense in previous years. Getting him back to play his first game of since week 1 is excellent for them, because he was basically the receiver 2 last year. So a nice tight end safety blanket for Lawrence as well. So that'd be nice for them to get it going this week. A few of us on the network, whether it's our podcasts or our writers, they're quite high on the Jags coming into the year, especially their defense, which has been the biggest disappointment, I'd say, rather than the offense. The Jags defense, they're number 30 in yards, number 29 in yards per play, as I mentioned, because there's some teams that played less games, number 31 against the pass, and deep in the bottom half of the league in sacks and QB hits. And that final number is mad, because that's a defensive line with so much invested in it, whether it's Trevon Walker, obviously first overall pick, and then they've paid Josh Hines-Allen, and then they went out and added Arik Armstead in free agency this year as well. They had over 100 QB knockdowns last year. This year they're on pace for only 81, which would be near the bottom of the league. I think the Patriots were about 29th of that number last year. Which is a huge disappointment because of how much money they spent on that defensive line. Their safeties are also 76th and 78th out of 80 this season in PFF grades. They're getting burned deep. Obviously, we saw that last week with the Colts game, which means we may be nearing a shootout in this game because neither team can run the ball well, really, as you referred to there. And after last week, I'm sure if you're Caleb and his receivers seeing that Jags pass defense, you're probably licking your lips looking at those numbers. Aren't you?
Yeah, I mean, for sure. The Jags defense, like you said, I mean, they've got too many big names really on that unit to be as poor as they have been. Josh Allen, or Josh Hines Allen, I think it is now. He he's being paid exceptional, top of the line money, and to be paying someone that much money and the unit to be this bad is not good. I mean, Trayvon Walker as well, right? Number 1 overall pick. Is he the most forgotten about number 1 overall pick in recent memory? Like, he might well be. And so, yeah, I know you're totally right. This is a great game, or great opportunity for the Bears, certainly to build on last week against the Panthers, and continue that offensive momentum, continue that chemistry, keep building that synergy for them. They'll definitely be licking their lips heading to London to face the Jags. The defense has been poor, like you said. The offense has been disappointing, but the defense has been, top of the line disappointment coming into it. Because, like you said, there was a lot of, maybe not a lot of hype for the Jags this season, but there was some. People were talking about them. The NFC South right after the Texans really was kind of wide open, I guess. It's tough that they've had this poor of a start.
Yeah, and that makes this game must win. It keeps our season alive. But if you come out of London with 2 wins, you're sitting at 3 and 4, and then you're very much alive. And I think that this team has playoff aspirations, as you said. Certainly had them. They were competing for the division. They would have competed for the 1 seed at one point last year, and then ended up missing the playoffs entirely in the space of about 6 games, which is you just never see. It's because of the collapse at the end of last year, and that's sort of carried into this year. And because of that, Doug Peterson and Trent Baalke are on the hottest of hot seats. If this London trip doesn't go well, then someone could be gone. Yeah,
I think so. I mean, the Jets have certainly proved that if you struggle in London, you're in trouble. Definitely, especially back-to-back games in London, and they're already they're 1 and 4, right? So they're facing a difficult. This is a big moment in their season, because they're either going to fight back, and then by mid-season, they'll have a hovering around 500 potentially. But if they lose both these games, they're looking at a top 3 pick, right, in the draft. Is kind of how it's shaping out, which is not what they would have had kind of on the menu heading into the season. So big couple of games for them in London.
Awesome. Right, it's now prediction time before we do the rest of the slate later on in the podcast. The Bears are favoured by 1.5 points in this game, which is about what you'd see in a home international game, because there's not really that much of a home advantage. That's just standard that we think the Bears are a slightly better team. And I tend to agree with them, so I think they'll win. Obviously, 1.5 points is winning by 2 points. So I think that it's very unlikely you win by 1 point. So I'm going to pick the Bears to cover this game. I just don't trust the Jags, and as I mentioned, the Bears' offense, they're going to be hoping this is a get right game. So I'm going to pick the Bears to cover that spread. What about you?
Yeah, I think I'm going to follow you. I think the Bears' offense for sure. They looked much improved against Panthers. They've improved every week. I think that team is starting to get to gel with Caleb. I think the defense is playing at a brilliant at a high level, and the Jags are not. So I think 1.5 points for sure. I think you take that all day.
Awesome. Right, now let's switch to looking at the whole NFC. Just looking at the picture, the state of the NFC, going through a couple minutes on each team, saying how we feel about each team's season so far. We did this for the AFC last week, and it was really fun. So we're going to do it again with the NFC. And we're going to start with the NFC East, and we're going to go in standing order. So that means that we're going to start with the Washington Commanders, who are 4-1 and leading the NFC East. And I don't think anyone would have thought that would happen at the start of the season, but after 5 weeks, the Commanders are the leaders of the NFC East. A big factor why is their number 1 scoring offense. It's number 3 in yardage too. Jaden Daniels, as you mentioned earlier in the podcast, he has been an absolute revelation, hasn't he?
Oh, yeah, it's been unbelievable. I mean, there was that crazy, I think it was the most mind-blowing stat I've ever heard, I think, through 4 weeks, was that, the Commanders had punted less than they had, scored, or scoring touchdowns or something crazy like that. It was like, that's not quite right. It was like, that was it. They punted less than the incompletions Jaden Daniels had thrown through 4 weeks. That is absolutely ridiculous. Obviously, they, that leveled out a little bit more against the Cleveland Browns because they have a decent defense and were up for it. But I mean, he still torched them with 240 yards or whatever it was, and another rushing day for him. Look, Commanders offense. I don't know if anyone really saw this coming, but they've got playmakers, right? Like they've got playmakers out even outside of Jaden Daniels. Terry McLaurin, I think, has been an underrated, brilliant receiver in the league for the last 5 years or so ever since he came in, really. And then they made a bunch of moves in the offseason. Austin Eckler coming in, he's shown some life, some resurgence. And then Brian Robinson is always he's always going to be a good power back for the Commanders. So I think the offense is so fun to watch. And I'm not sure how many people thought that would be the case going into the season. And the defense is doing well as well. I mean, Dan Quinn, right, he's come in and hats off to him. He's kind of changed the culture, which that franchise desperately needed. So yeah, it's unbelievable. 4-1. They're looking like easily the best team in the NFC East right now.
Yeah, which just seems mental, especially when you look at their offense last year compared to this year. Offensive line was terrible. Sam Howell was the most sacked quarterback last year for the Commanders. They're 27th in the league in rushing. They're now number 2 in the league in rushing, which has completely changed. And as you mentioned, Dan Quinn, obviously new head coach of this team, did a great job with the defense as well. They were last in the league last year. They're now in the middle of the league in most categories, and they've got some guys injured on that defense as well. So that's certainly a good sign for them. And always there's a team that goes from worst to first in a division. I'd probably say that they are the most likely candidates right now. Would you agree with me?
Oh yeah, I mean it certainly looks that way. I mean I don't have the I don't have the people who finished last year off the top of my head, but I mean to be honest, the Commanders look so good, right? They look like they're primed to make a run in the NFC right now. I mean the NFC's wide open. It's such a crazy conference. So many different teams could go off at kind of at any time, build momentum, especially we'll see obviously in a few weeks when things start to heat up and teams start to position themselves. But no, you're totally right. The Commanders look brilliant. They're 4-1. Yeah, I mean, what a start from them. If Jaden Daniels continues this, I mean, he'll be in the MVP conversation, which is absolutely wild. Whether he'll win it or not remains to be seen. But he has certainly been one of the 5 best players in football through the first 5 weeks. It's been incredible. So yeah.
Yeah, the only time we've seen anything really similar is when Justin Herbert came in his rookie year, and his rookie year to this date is his best year in football. So hopefully that's not the case with Daniels, but we'll see what happens there. But so it certainly doesn't happen very often with a rookie quarterback. Right, we'll go over to the Cowboys now. They're second in the division at 3-2. But there are a lot of serious questions surrounding this team despite their winning record. Obviously, Dak and CeeDee Lamb are great. They're one of the best combinations in the entire league. Dak almost got MVP level numbers last year with throwing CeeDee all the time. He was brilliant last year after a dodgy year the year before. And now they've both been paid. They're going to be in Dallas for a while. But the Cowboys have 0 run game. They're 31st in the league at running the football. And that really holds back this offense because if you can take away CeeDee Lamb, they are very, very vulnerable. Brandon Cooks has been banged up as well, which hasn't helped. This offense has not been the same because it can't run the ball even more than it couldn't last year. And then you look at this defense, which has taken a major step back under Mike Zimmer. Now, obviously, they've had injuries. When you're missing your 2 best players last year in Micah Parsons and Deron Bland, right now, Parsons for less time than Bland will be out. But that's bad. But that's not really been the issue, the pass defense. It's been the run defense. They're getting run all over. And the turnovers last year that you got with Bland are not happening this year as well. And they are getting torched a little bit in the pass game because their corners are quite aggressive. Trayvon Diggs and obviously Bland before, they're very, very aggressive corners looking for the turnover, and sometimes that does cost them a little bit. And we're seeing that at times this year. Now, they lost a lot of depth in free agency, and we're starting to see now that they're injured that this Cowboys team aren't as strong as they were last year because you can't afford to pay anyone. When you're paying Dak, when you're paying CD, when you've got Micah Parsons and everyone coming, this now we're seeing a team that's Super Bowl window is probably ending. How do you feel about the Cowboys through 5 weeks?
I mean, yeah, they're a weird team to kind of judge. I'd say they're kind of almost they're probably slightly worse than what you might have expected them to be, I think, going into the season, right? Like the run game wasn't really addressed, apart from the nice return of Ezekiel Elliott, which I guess is fun, but he's basically a goal line back now. It was kind of really what you're going to use him for. They don't have a run game, which is tough because that is going to help. Like Trevor Lawrence is going to help Dak out. It's going to help him, run the offense and give the defense something to think about. Because right now, it's basically just CeeDee Lamb, especially Brandon Cooks out. Jake Ferguson was obviously injured first few weeks of the season. I think he's back now. He played in week 5, but the offense might improve as it goes forward, but the run game is something to be concerned about. The defense, like you said, it's not what we expected them to be. Micah is out. That's rough. Darren Bland hasn't played at all, or was out certainly so far. And DeMarcus Lawrence, I think, is out as well with a longer injury. So, they're losing their stars on defense pretty quickly, which is not what you want to see. They've been a great defense the last few years now. Losing Dan Quinn to the Commanders is obviously a blow. Mike Zimmer's a good defensive coach, though, so you would have expected that to be, maybe if they looked slightly different, maybe some growing pains. But it's not what they'd have expected. It was a big win to beat the Steelers on Sunday night. That was very needed. I think if they had lost that game, I think Mike McCarthy would have been under a lot of pressure.
Even though the Steelers handed that game to them, they still it's a good job they did win that game. And we'll see what happens with McCarthy. Obviously, the coach that Jerry was always wanted is Sean Payton, but now he's got Bo Nix and he's settled in Denver. That's a very interesting scenario as to who could be the new Cowboys head coach, because they've not renewed McCarthy, and it looks like it could be the start of the end there. So we'll see what happens. But I can absolutely see them being a playoff team. Not certain of that with the way the NFC is looking, because for the first time in ages, the NFC is the best conference in football now. We've sort of shifted over because the AFC has been very disappointing this year. Last year was their Super Bowl winning team. I think they're probably the best team in the league last year on paper when you look at everything, especially their numbers. But they got absolutely embarrassed in the playoffs, I can't see this team, which is worse, doing anything other than sort of maybe getting knocked out first, second round of the playoffs, because they're just better teams in the NFC right now. We'll go over to the Eagles. Now, they're back with their bye week this week. They were 2-2 heading into their bye. Yep. And that came at a good time after their big loss to the Bucs the week before. Now, they're in a very similar spot to the Cowboys. You could say they're very talented on paper, but they have flaws that are hurting them. And one of them, again, is their run defense. Getting run all over. They're allowing 5 yards per carry, 29th on defense in yards per play. And the biggest problem of all has actually been Jalen Hurts, who they paid a lot of money to a couple of years ago. He has really struggled in 2024. The most turnover-worthy plays in the league this season, despite playing one game less than everybody else, which is just mental. That shows how many turnover-worthy plays he's had. Even with the bye week, he still leads that metric. Obviously, leads the league in interceptions as well. And he is also PFF's 29th best quarterback of 36 graded this year as well. For someone who was their offense last year, the tush push, and that is a concern for Philly, isn't it?
Oh yeah, 100%. It's tough. I mean, Jalen Hurts plays an exciting brand of football, but really, I think since losing Shane Steichen to the Colts, it's kind of his production, or at least how he looks on the field, has kind of trailed off a little bit, which is it's been a shame. And I think it must be difficult for Philadelphia Eagles fans to watch, to swallow. I mean, obviously they'll still have hope because he's shown that potential before. He's shown that he can deliver. But yeah, it's been a difficult run. Particularly, I mean, the Eagles were they were probably the worst 11-1 or 10-1 team ever last season. They didn't look convincing at all, but they had that incredible record and then just fell off. I don't know what happened then last season. I don't think anyone really does. It was just a complete collapse. And obviously they get slammed out the playoffs by the Bucs, and that's kind of come into them a little bit this season. I mean, obviously they made some good moves, and Saquon's come in and looked very good. Saquon behind a good offensive line is always going to be one of the most exciting and fun players to watch in the NFL. But they've had a lot of injuries as well to the receiving core, which is not what you want, and certainly doesn't help Jalen Hurts out. But yeah, difficult start for Jalen Hurts. He's talented enough to bounce back, but yeah, I mean, there'll be a lot of pressure, I think, on the coordinators, and pressure's going to be on Nick Sirianni at some stage, because I think he was lucky to kind of survive last season, to be honest.
Yeah, absolutely. They paid a lot of money to their two, big coordinators in Kellen Moore and Vic Fangio, two of the most desired in the entire league. They
Yeah.
brought those two guys in, and yeah, both of those units have underwhelmed so far. Now Saquon's been good, and he's been sort of only bright spark you could say about the Eagles' offense. And if this continues, you can see them just giving the ball to Saquon more and more and more, and that might, that will keep them in games. It will do. And I think Fangio's defense will get better. Normally, we saw that in Denver, we saw that in Miami last year. That as the season goes on, his units get better and better as the year goes on, and I think we'll see that this year as well, especially coming off a bye. There's extra time to work and everything. I think that Philly can beat everyone, but I think they could also lose to anyone. We saw that at the end of last year. We've seen that this year as well with the games they've lost. I don't trust them, probably more than the Cowboys. But yeah, I'm just in the thing. Same with you, same boat as you. But I think we just wait and see who they are, and go from there really. But certainly been an entertaining team to watch this year, which is always nice when you get those teams that are very entertaining to watch. Right, we'll finish the NFC East with the Giants, who are bottom of the division, but only half a game back off the Eagles at 2-3. And I feel a lot better about them this week than I did last week. This time last week after their shock win against the Seattle Seahawks. Now, Daniel Jones is playing for his career. They've made it very open. This is his year to earn, obviously he's on the contract. They can get out of that massive contract they gave him a couple of years ago this off-season. So this is Daniel Jones playing for his future in New York. And to be fair to him, the last couple of years, not the last couple of years, couple of weeks, he's had two pretty good games, to be fair to him, especially last week without Neighbours and Devin Singletary as well. Obviously, they're two best offensive weapons. Now, before the season, I said that I feel they'd be better this year than last year, but they had a brutal schedule, and I thought they'd probably be around the same record. Now, the fact they've only won 2 games already this year is good, especially with the lack of star power. I feel like they're probably sit around the middle ground of the league. It's looking like that is the case, but that defense put on a show last week, and yeah, Jones, to be fair to him, did play quite well.
Yeah, for sure. He definitely played well. I mean, to go to Seattle and win is no easy feat. Seattle are a very good team. Very good defense, very good, and an offense has been playing well to start the season, really. So I mean, it was a huge win for New York. I'm not sure anyone really thought the Giants were going to go in and get that win, but it was crazy. I mean, I think especially without, as you said, without Neighbours, who's been amazing. In one of my fantasy leagues, he's absolutely saving me. And then Devin Singletary he's done a solid job, replacing Saquon. But I think Daniel Jones really stepped up against Seattle. That was a big performance from him. And it takes the pressure off himself, takes the pressure off Brian Daboll. So yeah, it'd be good. I mean, the defense played brilliantly as well, right? Like Dexter Lawrence is emerging. I mean, obviously he's been very good for a couple of seasons now, but he's really emerging as one of those kind of high end defensive linemen in the NFL. Deontay Banks, who's just had a bit of a tough start to the season, covered DK Metcalf really, really well last week. So it's really promising, I think, for New York. The fact they're only half a game back, with all the negativity, I guess, surrounding them after a couple of weeks of the season, you take that all day long. So yeah, definitely promising for the Giants heading into week 6.
Yeah, absolutely for them. Right, I'll go over to the NFC North now. The Vikings are 5-0. We touched on them earlier, so we'll spend a little bit less time on in this segment. Obviously, terrific start, very well coached. Before we move on, is there anything you want to add about the Vikings season so far?
I'll say I find it quite funny that I think their projected win total at the start of the season was 6.5 wins. So they've almost topped that in as many weeks, which is absolutely wild. So look, what a season they're having. I don't think we need to add too much. They're having a great season. Long may it continue, I think.
Yeah, and I mean, when I was doing the pre-season predictions for our season preview guide, and then also for this podcast as well, I was looking at Minnesota and I was like, do you know what? This team could be tasty. I was like, I picked them to be a playoff team before the end of the season. And then I went on a podcast. I was guessing another podcast, another UK podcast, about a month before the season. I got talked out of it, and I really annoyed at myself that I went away from that prediction, because I knew they'd look this frisky, and I really annoyed at myself for getting persuaded to change that. A team that I was really high on are the Lions, and they're an interesting one coming off a bye this week. The 3-1 second in the division can go to 4-1 this week if they win. We knew. We now know that they'd win the NFC West because they've played 3 NFC West teams and they've beaten all of them. So it's certainly there. But in the games outside of that division, it's weird them having those games start straight away to start the schedule. That is really weird. But yeah, no, obviously that loss to Tampa Bay. 9 teams out of 10, they win that game. They absolutely troll at them. But the Bucs played really efficient football and Campbell left some points on the table before the half, and that game didn't really go their way. But other than that, the Lions looked okay. Their offense had a slow start. The defense, we'll get into in a minute. Their offense had a slow start, but the last game before they buy them on the game against Seattle, they looked back to their best. 42 points on Mike McDonald's defense. It's just really impressed this year. That looked like vintage Ben Johnson offensive coordinator Lions football. And for me, I do think from what we've seen through 4 games to them, they are massive Super Bowl contenders because they look like they've sorted out their defense. It has been their Achilles heel the last couple of years because they've been passed all over. They went out and got Carlton Davis in free agency. They drafted Terry and Arnold first round of the draft, and they've made a big difference. And the fact that Aiden Hutchinson is probably on his way to Defensive Player of the Year at this rate as well has been a major factor. I love watching this Lions team. Looking forward to watching them this week. And yeah, I think we'll see how it goes. That Tampa Bay loss was a little bit of a blow, but as I said, they win that game 99% of the time. And Campbell has used it as an opportunity to rebuild, build and bounce on the team. He was very open in his media opportunities following that Tampa Bay loss. I'm really hard, but the Lions. Are you as high on them as I am?
Yeah, I mean, I think they're definitely in that bubble, right, of teams from the NFC that could possibly, very plausibly, make the Super Bowl, right? They are, as you say, really a fantastic team from top to bottom, right? Like every level, and like going back to that, the Buccaneers loss. I mean, like the Bucs are a playoff team as well, right? Like it's that kind of happens in football, any given Sunday, then that kind of stuff can happen. So. I mean, yeah, Aiden Hutchinson got 5 sacks in a loss. I don't know how many times you'll see that. But look, I think the defense has been much improved. Aiden Hutchinson is, as you said, right, he's probably the lead contender for Defensive Player of the Year. He has taken another step up, which is just what you want to see, really, if you're a Lions fan and a fan of football. You want to see the best guys get better and the guys with potential reach their potential. And that's what he seems to be doing, which is awesome. But on the offensive side of the ball, Man, they are so fun to watch. They've got so many different. It's awesome to see Jameson Williams as well, kind of taking that next step. Because now with that, that 1-2 punch of him and Amon-Ra St. Brown, Sam Laporta has been slow. Obviously last season he was really well. He was absolutely amazing, right? Like he was such an incredible addition to that offense. He's been a bit of a smaller factor through 5 weeks. But look, I'm sure they'll scheme him into it at some point. They've got so many weapons, and I think. Almost like their secret weapon. They did it to the Rams, man. They like the fact that they can just bully, right? They can just bully teams when it's not working. They can just run the ball and run it hard. David Montgomery is a dog. Jahmyr Gibbs is still is a fantastic compliment to David Montgomery's like power running play. It's just, and that offensive line is still the best in football. So I think if you have the best offensive line in football. And you have a competent defense, you're going to be a very good team. And you have a quarterback, of course. But yeah, look, Jared Goff had a great game against the Seahawks. Maybe he's steadily building an MVP campaign. We'll see. That would have been a very attractive bet, I think, at the start of the season, to be honest. But yeah, look, the Lions are in a great position.
Yeah, and it's anyone's going to take the MVP the way his quarterback play has been. This season, there's been no standout guy. The run game has really been where we're looking at in the NFL this year. It's the fewest amount of yards passing, just average per game in the league since 2006. So we're certainly we're shifting back to a rushing league the way it's going now, which is really fun to see because it is something different. And all of the top offenses, if you look at all of them. not of the top 6-7, most of them also lead the league in rushing as well. So we're very much seeing it shift back to in that category. And the Lions obviously a big factor as to why, because of what they put on tape the last couple of years. We'll go over to the Packers now. Again, another team that run the football really well. They're probably having a great season, you can say, because they're sat at 3-2, but obviously those 2 one-score losses came down to the wire. It could be 5-0, and I think they take 3-2. Bear in mind, they lost Jordan Love for a couple of games as well. Super impressive job for them. They're going to have to do well in their remaining games. 3 games against Minnesota and Detroit, obviously, because they dropped the game to Minnesota a couple of weeks ago to have a shot at the division. As they are a couple of games back now, obviously Minnesota being 5-0, and then obviously being back on Detroit because of being back on Minnesota because of that as well. But Matt LaFleur teams, they typically peak late. They always start slow. They peak late, and the stretch with Malik Willis just shows how good of a coach Matt LaFleur is, isn't it?
Oh yeah, that was the thing I was going to lead off. That it's insane to me that well, if you told someone through 5 weeks the season Malik Willis had played 2 games and the Packers were 3-2, which 2 games were they? But no, I mean, he was 2-0 in his games. I think Matt LaFleur is in that top bracket of coaches in the league, right? Like, he continues to prove that time and time again. Look, the Packers are really well set up. They were kind of my dark horse Super Bowl team kind of this season. I say kind of dark horse, I mean kind of with a pinch of salt. They're a very good team. They almost made the NFC Championship game last season. They were one poor Jordan Love throw away from doing it. So yeah, look, they're really well built. They're really well structured. You're totally right. Like, they peak later normally under Matt LaFleur, but he's such a good coach. And the Malik Willis games kind of prove that. Not to be too mean to Malik Willis, but it kind of it absolutely shows how good a coach Matt LaFleur truly is. I don't think he's really got so much credit over the last few years, especially under with the Rodgers years. I don't think he got as much credit as he should. But he's getting his flowers at the moment. And if he continues to do it with the Packers, as I say, I mean, I think the thing with them, which will be interesting to kind of see unfold, is just the defense, really, because the defense has a lot of talent, right? Like, a lot of guys who were taken high. I think 7 first-round picks, I think, on that defense.
Loads. Yeah, absolutely loads. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think given the individual talent they have on the field, I don't know if they're showing that as a unit. Like, I feel like they probably should be a bit more dominant, but look, it's still early in the season. Packers are still 3-2. They got nothing to worry about. As you said, Jordan Love was out for 2 games. They've still got a winning record. They'd have snapped your hand off when he went down in week 1 for that. So, especially going 0-1 and losing to the Eagles in Brazil. So, yeah, look, they're totally well set up, especially in this division, which is uber competitive.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, you mentioned the defense. Jeff Hafley, new defensive coordinator, coming over from Boston College. He's only made this defense watchable this year, I think, because there was a lot of clamouring for Joe Barry to be fired because of the way the defense has been the last couple of years. And it has, in aspects, it is better. Xavier McKinney's been a big part of that. He's having an all-pro season, 3-5 weeks already. An interception in every single game this season, which is just crazy, especially at safety as well. And, as this defense, which has a lot of injuries, obviously Jair Alexander's missed time, for example, literally their best player. As they get healthier, I feel like they will probably start to be better, especially with the new scheme and everything. And defenses typically develop later in the season. So we'll see how that happens, but there's certainly been signs that it's going to be better than it was last year. And yeah, I think I certainly wouldn't want to face this team in the playoffs. I think, at least there'll be a high wild card team that could win the division still. And yeah, I really, you mentioned I wouldn't be surprised if we got a Lions Packers NFC Championship game or something that those teams are gonna be it would be a shame for them to play in the wildcard round, for example. That would be a real shame because you think they could both go pretty far. But I that'd be and obviously with Minnesota in a mix as well at 5-0. Certainly the way it's looking, the NFC playoffs are going to flow through the NFC North, which is going to be very fun because the rivalries in that division, quite intense compared to in other divisions as well. So
for sure,
in the playoffs, that is going to be lovely. And then we'll finish with the Bears. We'll gloss over them as the Vikings as we covered them early in the podcast. Before we get on to the NFC South, is there anything you wanted to say about the Bears? Obviously, we mentioned Caleb, we mentioned the defense, a little bit on the Eberflus and everything. Obviously, we mentioned it earlier. 4-2 if they win this London game, great. 3-3 still looking pretty good, and it's just it's about one score games, and they've won one score games, to be fair to them.
Yeah, I think so. I think Eberflus is going to be the biggest kind of question mark for the Bears going forward, just for this season, really. You just want to see. I think at the end of the day, you just want to see Caleb and the offense kind of show potential, right? Like you want him to show flashes of why he was taken so high, which he did last week. So look, it's promising for them. I think we'll just see kind of how that goes, and I think Eberflus is going to be. Look, he'll be watched very closely as the season kind of goes on. Because I think when you have like an asset as coveted as Caleb Williams, you almost want an offensive guy. Well, this new age of the NFL, they want the offensive coach, to build that rapport with the star quarterback. So Eberflus, but to be fair to him, the defense is playing incredibly well. So look, he'll be watched, I think, as the season goes on. But look, Bears are 3-2, as you said. They're in a great spot.
Yeah, absolutely. Right, let's move over to the NFC South. The Falcons lead the division right now after back-to-back division wins over the Bucks and the Saints. The Bucks obviously last Thursday night. That was one hell of a football game. Probably the best. I think it was the best Thursday night football game in years that I can remember. It was one hell of a game. Obviously, they went all in this off-season, spent money on their defense, which I liked last year, but now they needed some superstars, and they've added some superstars to that defense. And then obviously the big moves were at quarterback, securing their now with Kirk Cousins and their future with Michael Penix as well. And boy, is Cousins playing well right now. He's just come off a 500-yard game, a few primetime wins this year as well, which he's been knocked for years on. And he leads the league in game-winning drives this year as well. For Atlanta, obviously, that was probably his biggest question, coming off an Achilles as well. That is a great sign, because this has been Cousins' weakness.
Oh, 100%. Certainly the primetime wins. I mean, he's always kind of been a bit ridiculed for that aspect. I think Kirk Cousins has always been surprisingly good at game-winning drives. He's actually, people say what they want about Kirk Cousins. He's a very serviceable quarterback. He always has been. Certainly from his Minnesota Vikings tenure. He's always been I don't want to say he's not top of the line quarterback, but you can win with Kirk Cousins, right? And the Falcons are proving that. They've got the offense, they have a lot of superstars around them, or a lot of, at least on paper, right? And it's nice to see the Drake London is starting to play well. We saw Kyle Pitts have a good day on Thursday night. So yeah, it's cool. It's nice to see Kirk Cousins delivering, man. That was an awesome performance against the Buccaneers. Just unbelievable performance, really. How many yards was it? I want to say it was over 500, right? It was
512 or something like. Yeah, it was
unbelievable.
Yeah, mental.
Yeah.
Go on.
Oh no, I was just gonna say, and then just touching on the defense as well, like you said, the Michael Penix pick was so insane at the time, because you thought that if you're paying Kirk that money, you're trying to win now, especially with the players they have on offense and stuff. But then getting Judon in the trade, Justin Simmons in free agency. Look, brilliant defense, and Raheem Morris is a good defensive coach.
Yeah, absolutely. My only criticism of Zach Robinson's offense would be get Bijan involved a little bit more, and that's my only thing. But yeah, I think obviously a very tough division. Could actually see 3 playoff teams out of this division as well, the way it's going with the Saints and the Bucks, and that'll be the first time that's happened for a while, because the Panthers have been terrible for a while, and I think the last time that happened was 2017, and we saw 3 playoff teams out of this division. After those 2 wins, the Falcons are certainly the favourites. I think they could be dangerous in the NFC. If you mentioned Cousins has been very clutch. They've looked good in prime time. They've come in behind a lot to win games. They've been in 1-score games. They've kept it close. If they got a little bit more pass rush, they've only got 5 sacks as a whole on a team this year, which is one of the lowest numbers in the league. Judon's been good. He's certainly made an impact. This defense may be a little bit different if he wasn't there. But yeah, if they could just get a little bit more pressure on quarterbacks, then yeah, I think the Falcons are certainly going to be dangerous in the NFC. Right, we'll go over to the Bucks, who, as we mentioned earlier, they beat on Thursday night. I also really like the way the Tampa Bay are playing right now. obviously carrying on from last year, but especially Baker, who is probably having his best year of any since he got drafted number 1 overall in 2018. He's playing some great football right now, like top 5, maybe even top 3 in the league. Good now, Baker Mayfield is. James, fantasy expert who I had on the podcast last week, he said that he would pick Baker Mayfield for MVP, or certainly having in the conversation right now, and he certainly deserved it. It's where PFF have him. He's in the top 5, along with guys like Brock Purdy and Derek Carr. And the impressive thing for him is the fact that he's doing this behind a bad offensive line. Now, Baker in his Cleveland years, when they had a good offensive line, they were really good. That's when we saw the best out of Baker. That's when they won the playoff game, and in his first year as well. And when they were bad offensive line, he was terrible, and that's why they decided to move off him. Now, Baker this year, the pressure's there for the Bucs offensive line, and he's making great decisions. In the same situation in Cleveland, he struggled. And, this time he's looked the best he's ever done in the pocket. He's making so many plays with his legs to extend drives as well. Obviously in Baker, properly run around. That's how they won the game against the Lions. And he's also getting the ball out the quickest he ever has before as well, 2.61 seconds. So with the way this defense can play, frustrating opponents again. We saw that in the Lions game. That is a recipe for success for the Bucs, you could say.
Oh, yeah, no, for sure. I mean, it's great to see Baker making those moves with his legs, man. I've always thought he's quite nifty kind of quarterback. So it's great that he's kind of leaning into that aspect. I'm a big Baker Mayfield guy. I could go on and on about how that Cleveland Browns it's just hilarious given how it's all panned out. I mean, not if you're a Browns fan, but for Baker, it's just been an awesome kind of redemption kind of story as we saw last year, and it's awesome that he's taken that to the next level this season. No, you're right. He's playing the best ball of his career. The Bucs they're for real. The Bucs are a real team that are going to be a threat in the NFC. They lost that game to the Falcons. They should have won that game against the Falcons, really. So, I mean, I think the Bucs, they're really well set up. Bucky Irving looks like a good running back to kind of complement Rashad White. So they've definitely got guys on offense that can, that will keep defensive coordinators up at night. So I think, Baker's in this situation. He's thriving. I think it's just the timing really of his throws. I think he's really taken a step up on, he's landed in Florida. So look, I think the Bucs are a fun team. I think they're going to definitely push for the NFC South title. I think they're going to push for a wild card regardless. I think, even if they don't finish, beat the Falcons, it looks like it's going to be the Falcons as their main contender. So yeah, look, the Buccaneers are a fun team. And it's cool that they built on last season.
Yeah, I feel like a broken record here, but again, I wouldn't want to play these guys in the playoffs because they know how to win. You alluded to it there. They have a recipe for success. It works. They can frustrate teams, and we saw that in their run in the playoffs last year, and we've seen that with the wins they've got this year as well. We're going on to the Saints now, who are 2-3 right now, third place in the division. Obviously, they were the league's early sweethearts the first couple weeks, with breaking records in those first 2 weeks, but they've lost 3 straight since then. And it's partly because they've been very unfortunate with injuries, especially on the offensive line, which has been the most surprising unit because it was terrible last year. It's been really good this year. But they lost centre Aaron McCoy and guard Cesar Ruiz to injuries shortly after that record-breaking start. And they went from dominating on the interior to not. And now because of that, Derek Carr's gone down for at least 2 games. He was playing at a near MVP level before his oblique injury. And whilst he is recovering from that, Spencer Rattler, obviously rookie, will fill in, which I thought was surprising. But it makes sense putting him out there, especially with all the hype about him a couple of years ago, and then obviously this year as well, coming into the draft. But with the way this team is win now, you probably want a guy with a little bit extra to come in rather than Jake Haener, who was the other option. I mean, great opportunity for a rookie. Again, some of our pundits love Spencer Rattler, some of our draft guys, but it is real hard luck for a team that was a real surprise at the start of the season, isn't it?
Yeah, look, that offense through the first 2 games looked like they were about to take the league by storm. Clint Kubiak was already being anointed as kind of the next great mind in the NFL. Maybe he still is, right? But they've they've come a bit unstuck. I think the last couple, they've come a bit stuck actually the last couple of weeks, really. That game on Monday night, I think was deeply frustrating for them. I think, what was it? It was 4.3 yards per play, 3.1 yards per carry. The Chiefs' defense is obviously one of the best in the NFL, but that's disappointing for a team that blew their opponents away through those opening 2 weeks. And now Derek Carr is injured, so they're gonna, if that injury, becomes like a nagging thing, I guess, over the season, they could very quickly slip out of contention in the NFC South because the Falcons and Bucks are so good. Big opportunity for Spencer Rattler. I think they had to give it to Rattler. Really, even though it's a big spot for him, he's obviously a rookie. He feels like the one that if they're gonna have someone who's more of a long-term option, it's gonna be him, right? So might as well chuck him in and see how, the opportunity's kind of presented itself. The starter's gone down, so kind of see what he can do. He looked good in preseason. He showed some flashes. So, yeah, it's difficult because obviously the Saints had such a great start, and everyone started overreacting, I guess. But look, I think they still have potential to be a very solid offense. That defense is always good, right? It's always been a difficult unit to break down. So they can easily stay competitive in this division and potentially be in a playoff race. It'll depend on Derek Carr's health, I think.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And then we'll finish the NFC South with the Panthers, who are 1-4. Yeah, they look to be heading for another top 10 position in the draft order, probably top 5 the way it's going. And the last time that wasn't the case was 2019. So that's like 5-6 straight seasons of just absolutely sucking. Again, should the Jets make the playoffs, they'll be up there in the longest playoff droughts as well. It's been a while since the Panthers have been in the playoffs, so not the best sort of run of years for them since David Tepper took over as owner, which is a shame for Panthers fans, especially how ambitious he was at the start of the ownership. It's not gone the way they thought they would have hoped when he bought the team around 2019, which, to be honest with you, they're in a weird spot. Obviously their offense has carried on its struggles from last year. Although the offensive line is better, they spent a lot of money on the offensive line this year. It is better, and especially with Andy Dalton. But I think Bryce Young, just unfortunately for him, it hasn't worked out. Now, he did come back into the game at the end of last week, and he did play pretty well. Probably the best he's actually looked in the NFL, which is interesting. But they're insisting that Andy Dalton is the starter, so we'll see how that goes. But yeah, you spoke about it early on in the podcast. It's their defense which has been the major disappointment because they were actually quite good last year, and that was the unit you thought if they are going to get some more wins, that would be the unit that carries the team. But yeah, it is way worse than it was last year. It's a tough time to be in Charlotte right now, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I think they're just going to go complete rebuild. Look, it's not looking like Bryce Young is the guy. Maybe he still is. Who knows? He was the first overall pick. So, I'd be surprised if they're fully gone with him. But I mean, he didn't look great before. He needed to be benched, really, just almost for his own sake. Just have a little reset, get the confidence back, build chemistry again. It's just tough because they traded for like Deontay Johnson. So they made moves, right? Like they made moves to try and get this going, but it's not working. They're a franchise that's just in complete disarray at the moment. When Andy Dalton is your best option at quarterback, you're probably not in the best position possible. And I like Andy Dalton, right? He's he was a great quarterback, and still kind of is. I mean, against the Raiders, he absolutely cooked them. But yeah, look, I think the Panthers are in a difficult spot, and I think they will be for some time.
Yeah, and the reason why the Bengals moved off Andy Dalton is because they had a terrible start to the season, and they saw Joe Burrow that, do you know what? Let's try and get Joe Burrow. So they benched Andy Dalton, even though he was having a pretty decent season. Midway through the season, straight after, it might have been before the London game against the Rams a couple of years ago, and then that's when the Bengals season just went downhill from there. And they did the tank work. They did get the number one overall pick. They beat teams like the Dolphins, who were trying to get that number one pick to it. Yeah. And so certainly was a great decision for Cincinnati. But it's looking 2024 and Dalton's still in the league, so it certainly shows that it was sort of treated unfairly there. But no, he's certainly been a serviceable sort of reliever or backup in his time since leaving Cincinnati. But We'll see what happens with the Panthers, but at least you got a little bit of hope that you probably are going to get top picks. That once if you're in the top draft order, even like I said, they've been there for a while in the last couple, the last like 5-6 years. You're just adding to your team, and if you can pick those guys well, then you can certainly go somewhere like Washington, for example. You can go from worst to first in your division. There's a team that does it every year, so certainly some hope for future years for Panthers fans. Right, I'll finish the NFC West now. The Seahawks lead the division at 3-2, and I don't think many would have put them as the leaders through 5 weeks before the season, but here we are, and it's rightly deserved, isn't it? Because they've been great.
Yeah, oh yeah, for sure. Look, they've got. I think that defense is super interesting because they have so many kind of young guys that maybe haven't established themselves in terms of like name and like brand, but are incredibly talented just across the board. So I think that unit is just going to continue to step up. Obviously lost the Giants last week, so that's a bit tough, but stuff happens. It's the NFL, so. Yeah, look, see, and then offensively, Geno Smith is still playing at a great level. Really established himself as a top tier starter in the NFL, which is mental, or at least a very serviceable starter in the NFL, which is crazy. The offensive, the receiving core are up there with the best in the league. DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, again another underrated receiver for the last kind of decade or so, and then Jackson Smith and Jigba, who continues to improve. And so I think it's a good time. And then obviously Kenneth Walker is an awesome running back. He's struggled with his health, hasn't he, so far this season? But man, when he's fit, he's awesome. So Seahawks looking good, man. 3-2.
Yeah, there's a crazy stat out there that the Seahawks have got a really good winning record when Walker plays, and when he doesn't play, then they don't play so well. A lot of their wins over the last 4 years, I think it's been since Walker's been in the league, have been because of him. So yeah, that's certainly. It pulled up on a game last year the Seahawks were playing. That blew my mind, and it's carried on to this year as well. If you go look at the numbers, they've got I think it's at least 20 wins or something like that. That Kenneth Walker's played in, which is just crazy. So he certainly is an impact player. And as you mentioned, Geno Smith been great. Especially behind this terrible offensive line too, like the second most pressures in the entire league behind Cleveland. Yeah, he's playing this well, which is just impressive. He was sacked 7 times last week and still looked good. So yeah, fair play to Geno. We'll see what happens in the division for the Niners, not for the Niners, for the Seahawks as well. Obviously, you've got the Rams and Niners that can get healthy. The Cardinals are only a game back as well. But right now they're in the driving seats certainly. So yeah, a great start for Seattle, and Mike McDonald's defense has been awesome. Right. Yeah. Arizona, second in the NFC West. Again, you would have thought the Niners and Rams, especially after last year, would have had a great start, but it's not been the case. They've been super injured. And because of their win over the Niners last week, the Cardinals have a leapfrog them in the division. They're a strange team, the Cardinals. I can't quite get a grip on who they are because Kyler's been excellent this season, so good. Like he's PFF's 5th best quarterback so far this year. He starred in their wins over the Rams and the Niners. He was great in the Buffalo game as well. It's one of the best games Kyle's ever played. Even though he lost, they're great. And again, he led the team to 2 very important division wins, which are the most important wins in the whole schedule. So yeah. It's nice to see Kyler Murray back, even though the Cardinals have looked a bit iffy the rest of the team.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, when he's he's feeling it, Kyler's one of the most fun quarterbacks to watch in football, right? I think it's just I don't know what the Cardinals' kind of goal was this season. Obviously, the goal is to win always, but like in terms of their realistic goal, I'm not sure. I'm not. They're one of those franchises that are difficult to really gauge. I guess kind of just making sure that Kyler builds that rapport with Marvin Harrison, right? Like that's what you want to see. And we've seen that a few times against the Rams for sure. That was his big breakout game. It destroyed me in fantasy because of that game. But yeah, I mean, look, the connection. He was a bit quiet in the win over the 49ers, but I mean, he made that massive catch on that ridiculous throw from Kyler off his back foot on 4th down, which kind of set the game up for them. So, look, the Cardinals are an interesting franchise. I think they're well coached. I think Jonathan Gannon is proving that he at least because the talent, I wouldn't say across the board is there for the Cardinals, but I think if you look at how the way that they've performed, I think they've always played, like last season, they lost a lot of games early, but they were a lot of close games, right? Like they played well against, played hard against teams. So I think you just want to keep seeing them take steps forward. Am I seeing that with Kyler back?
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. And I think I was hoping to see them contend more, but again, when you look at the rest of the league, especially in the NFC, it is very hard to win games in the NFC, and they've done 2 in a division. So it's certainly a good start to the season, and still rebuilding team. Obviously, last year they were without Kyler as well, so for him it's still pretty new offense as well, because obviously he missed the entirety of training camp last year because of the recovery and everything. So yeah, this is certainly still a new thing. But yeah, the Cardinals are looking fun. It's certainly, as you mentioned, just a fun team, and they're always in the witching hour on red zone. They're always it's always like a one-score game, as you were saying. So they're certainly always there for entertainment purposes. As have been the Niners for different reasons the last couple of years, or since Shanahan's been there, really, they've been very competitive. This year, they're sat at a losing record at 2-3. Obviously, the 2 very injured teams, the Niners and the Rams, we'll finish off this segment with. Niners, again, like, if you're not... They've been okay, but if you're not convinced by Brock Purdy now with this Niners team, then you need to get your head checked, because he's just getting better and better every single week. The way it's going, he has been awesome. He's getting better start by start. He may even be the Niners' best player this season. You look at that talent on that team. I'd argue he has been the Niners' best player in a season. Yeah, it's a disappointing season by their standards. Yeah, but they're 2-3. The big thing for them is they've lost 2 division games, which is, and they've got another big one tonight. They have to win tonight, you'd say, if they think they're going to, certainly get where they have been the last couple of years. But they're a team playing, very well in a majority of metrics. But the thing that's weird about them this year, they've lost 3 one-score games already. All the one-score games that Niners have played in, they've lost, which it is weird because we're not used to them doing that. Obviously, the injuries are a big factor.
I think the injury the injury to Christian McCaffrey at least is the biggest factor, certainly for the offense and the team as a whole, right? Like, I think he scores he scores a touchdown in seemingly every single game he plays, wearing 49ers colors. So him going down is obviously a big blow. Jordan Mason's played well, that's not to slight him. It's kind of just shows just how good McCaffrey is and what he means to that 49ers offense. You're right though. I think in terms of injuries, we saw Debo go down. George Kittle missed a game as well. And Brandon Ayuk, after dragging out the entire offseason, trying to get a big blockbuster contract, got it, $30 million a year. And he has struggled. Well, maybe not struggled, but he hasn't shown, the quality that he did last season.
Up until last week where he just caught every ball. But before that.
Exactly. We were kind of waiting for that game, and he finally kind of turned up last weekend, and it wasn't enough for them to win. I mean, I think the defense is still playing pretty well. The defensive line isn't playing as well as they have done in recent years for sure. But I mean, Fred Warner is still the best linebacker in football. So the 49ers defense, they have such big names, they have such talent. But you're right, they have to win tonight. I think tonight is a massive, massive game, certainly for the NFC West. The Seahawks removed 4-2. 49ers dropped to 2-4 if they win, if the Seahawks win. So, yeah, huge game for 49ers. A lot of people's kind of, de facto Super Bowl pick based on just how the team is set up and the names there. Look, Purdy's having a good season. It's difficult. He's done well with his legs, to be honest. He's shown a lot of that his kind of IQ, I guess, reading the defense, reading the moment. But it'll be interesting. I mean, it'd be interesting to see if Christian McCaffrey comes back at all, because that injury is looking, concerning, I would say, if you're a 49ers fan or just a Christian McCaffrey. I think just an NFL fan, it's sad to see one of the best players in the league not playing. So it's interesting because that injury is tendonitis. That doesn't even sound good as a word, and even if you don't know anything about medicine, right? It's a scary word. So yeah, look, I think the 49ers have been hit by injuries, but a lot of teams have. The Rams certainly have. So yeah, the NFC West is an injury hit league that the Seahawks look like they're trying to take advantage of.
Yeah, absolutely. And even if they do lose tonight, the Niners, they were in a similar spot last year where they dropped to a losing record, and then they went on that massive winning run to then go and win the division again. So don't rule them out, especially if McCaffrey comes back. We'll see what happens there, but. Yeah, they're in a similar spot last year. They went to the Super Bowl, so we'll see what happens with the Niners. But certainly an interesting start for them. And then you alluded to it there. The Rams have just been so injured, even more than the 49ers. They just had some horrific luck. And despite that, they've been in most games. There's only one of their 5 games that hasn't been decided by one score. That Cardinals loss. It's a good time for them to be on a bye this week, you could say, because they're getting a bit more healthy. Regrouping the rest of the year. I wouldn't count them out of it either, because their schedule does get easier later in the year. I think when I did the predictions, it was something I noticed that their second half of the year is quite favourable. So they can get the wins. They've got all the division games coming up as well. Other than they've won a game against San Francisco. Obviously, they lost one against Arizona. But say the Rams and Niners are battling for a for a wild card spot, that win earlier in the season may be the difference. So certainly still in it, and but it's been a shame, but the injuries have been a big factor, especially on offense, and then defense lost a lot of guys as well. The offensive line's been terrible because of the injuries, and then losing Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua for a lot of the season. The offense hasn't looked the same at all.
No, I mean, I don't have too much to add, to be honest. The Rams they're just a weird kind of they're that anomaly team every year, which have just been whacked by injuries. I think that offensive line just got completely shook up. I think they lost 4 or 5 starters at least, so that's crazy. And then you lose your 2 best receivers, your offense isn't going to look the same. But kudos to Matthew Stafford. He's obviously a great quarterback, and Sean McVay, probably the best coach in football. These 2 guys, they're kind of keeping them in games, as you said. So, maybe if they get some guys back, they can make a push. It's a shame, because I think they were definitely set up to be one of those. Certainly a dark horse kind of team to kind of surge through the NFC and potentially go to Super Bowl. At the start of the season, that's what it looked like they had the potential to do. These injuries have kind of taken it away from them. Yeah,
it has been a shame. Just to see it, because the Rams have got so many stars on that team as well. So when the stars go down, then it's just even for a neutral, it's not really fun to watch. It's certainly. I hope they can get some of those guys back. Right, let's finish the podcast as we always do, picking out all the games that we haven't already done for obviously the London game against the spread. Our predictions for the week. You can play along as well with us. We have our 10 Yards pick and pull on Sleeper. I had quite a good week last week compared to some of my other weeks, which is nice to see. And some of you that play along with the podcast also did, which is quite nice. Quite an interesting week last week, and hopefully I can have a good week as well. So as always, you can join the league. You can find out on social media and pick along against us. Right, we'll start with that Thursday night football game. I'm not sure if this will come out before or after, but certainly get the predictions underway. The Seahawks host the Niners Thursday night football. The Niners are 2.5-point favourites on the road, which with all the injuries is an interesting spread. And you know what? I've ridden the Seahawks high all season, especially in this podcast, and you know what? I just have a feeling that in a spot in Seattle, a Thursday night game in Seattle is a really tough place to play. So I'm going to pick the Niners, not the Niners. I'm going to pick the Seahawks to upset the Niners, who are favored by 2.5 points.
Well, yeah, I'm trying to decide what I want to do here, because I think you can go either way with it, really. I mean, Seattle, they're going to want to bounce back right from that loss to the Giants. 49ers, though, I mean, you got Shanahan against a rookie head coach in Mike McDonald on a primetime spot. You'd usually go with the mind of Shanahan. I'll follow you. Let's go Seahawks. Let's go Seahawks upset.
Yeah, as long as they get within 2, we win as well. So even if it's a 1-point game, we will win that game as well. Okay, we'll go over to the early window now, and the game of the early window is happening in Baltimore. The Ravens play the Commanders. The top 2 offenses in the league this season face off. The Ravens 6.5-point favourites, a massive spread, a massive spread over the Commanders, which is tempting to pick Washington to at least come within a few points. but the Ravens are number one run defense, which is a big factor in that. Also, again, rookie quarterback going up against the Ravens defense, and it's in Baltimore. I'm finding it really hard, even with the 6.5 point spread, to pick against the Ravens. So give me the Ravens to cover this game.
Oh yeah, you're kind of selling me on that, to be honest. I just love Lamar Jackson as well. I think he's having an unbelievable season as well. Again, he's certainly in that MVP conversation. What a game this is! 6.5 points. Commanders Ravens. Yeah, I'm gonna go. I'll go Ravens. I can see that. I can see them clicking over the course of the game, and just as great as the Commanders have been, I feel like their runs got to slow down at some point.
Yeah, and it just feels like this is the game because again it's going into Baltimore, and it just feels like this is the game where we'll see what Jane Daniels is truly made of as a rookie, and if he plays well this game, then he's probably locked up offensive rookie of the year, you could say. So we'll see. But we'll see how that goes. But I can't wait to watch that in the car on the way back from the the London game. On Sunday afternoon. Right, we'll go over to Green Bay. They host the Cardinals at Lambeau Field. The Packers are 5.5 point favourites at home. So again, quite a big spread, especially with how they've looked the last couple of weeks, especially on defence. And because of that, I'm going to pick the Cardinals to come within 5. Kyler Murray, again, I just give him a load of praise. The Cardinals are always in close games, and I'd back him to be within a field goal. So within 5 points, I think that's just a smart pick.
Yeah, it's definitely a smart pick. It's definitely a smart pick. I'm going to be not smart. I'll go Packers. I think you're right. I mean, that could go either way. We totally talked about the Cardinals as well before, so I've completely gone back on what I was saying. But I think the Packers are a good team. I think Matt LaFleur is a great coach. Yeah, I like it. I think Jordan Love is due like a really good performance. I could see him having against the Cardinals.
Yeah, absolutely, and especially after the way he's looked since he's come back from injury. Now he's a couple of weeks back in. We'll see how he'll look, and I'm looking forward to watching that game too. This one is an interesting one because Drake May's first start as Patriots quarterback will be against the Houston Texans. It's at Foxborough, but the Texans are 7.5 point favourites on the road, which just shows how bad the Patriots offense has been this year so far. And I'm going to pick, even with the massive spread, I'm going to pick the Texans to cover that because they had one hell of a good week last week, and they're obviously beating the Bills. And also the way that New England offense looked with Jacoby Brissett, obviously an experienced quarterback with the offensive line last week in Miami, doesn't fill me with much confidence at all. So yeah, give me the Texans to cover. Yeah, I'm gonna follow you with that. Patriots are not great. Texans are great. So I think they will take that. Yeah, that's sometimes it's as simple as that when you're picking games. So I completely agree.
I'm excited about it. It'll be cool to see Drake May in action though. See what he can bring to the Patriots offense.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, some people have been very critical because of how bad the offensive line's been and how the skill position players have been for New England. But just get him out there and just give them some experience. I think that's where it's going now because their season's going nowhere. So you may as well give them some experience right now. And I think that's where I'm looking in that move. Right, in all NFC South game, also in the early window, the Saints and Spencer Rattler welcome the Bucks. Now, even with Rattler starting instead of Derek Carr, the Saints are 2.5 point favourites here, which did intrigue me. So I mean, I've said I think the Bucks are a better team. They've got more wins, and their defense against a rookie quarterback. Give me the Bucks to upset the Saints here. Yeah, that feels like the pick. I think I'll follow you on that one. Bucks do have a tendency to lose weird games, though, don't they? They lost to Denver and against a rookie quarterback, so it's not completely off the cards. But I'll go Bucks for sure. Yeah, it really did surprise me that the Saints are favourite there. But again, sometimes like the home field advantage, and also as well the fact the Bucks have been going through some adversity of the hurricane this week, and obviously they've been based in New Orleans this week because of the hurricane. So so maybe that's coming to the fact obviously the Bucks having a disrupted week. But normally when that happens, teams come together as well. So if anything, that probably gives me more faith that the Bucks will do it. But we'll see. And again, that will be interesting to see how both teams come out ahead of that game. Two more in the early window. The Eagles. They host the Browns. The Eagles hoping to get the season back on track and really underway. The Browns, again, it's not looking great at all. Their defense is playing well, but Deshaun Watson is the most sacked quarterback in the league by quite a margin. The Eagles' defensive line, it's got so much talent on it, and it's not looking good for Cleveland. So even though it's an 8.5-point spread that the Eagles are favoured by, I'm still going to pick the Eagles just because Browns' offense is not filled with any hope whatsoever.
8.5 points is a lot, but the Browns' defense, we all thought they'd be so good as well, and they've just been not at all. And then the offense has been even worse. 8.5 points is a lot. Oh, Philly could do it though. I see it. Yeah, I'll follow you. Let's go. I think Philadelphia 8.5 points. Let's do it.
And the last game of the early window is an all AFC South tie. The Titans and Will Levis, who is healthy after his neck injury before the bye on Monday Night Football, they host the Colts and Joe Flacco, who had one hell of a game last week, stepping in for Anthony Richardson. The Colts are 1.5-point favourites on the road. I'm going to go against the grain here. I'm going to pick the home team, the Titans, just because they need this win, because they've been in every single game they've all one-score games. They could very easily be 3-1 right now rather than 1-3. The Titans could be. If it wasn't for Will Levis's turnovers at the start of the year, they could have a winning record. So I'm going to pick the Titans to upset the 1.5-point spread. Yeah, give me the Titans here.
You pick the Titans. Nice. I'll go Colts on that one for sure.
Awesome. Yeah, it's certainly a fun game. I quite like the Titans. As I said just a minute ago, could easily have a winning record. They've just been really unlucky with turnovers. Obviously Levis is a big part of that, but I'm going with them. And then we'll go over to the late window now. The first game in AFC West tie. The Broncos host the Chargers. The Chargers are 3.5-point favourites on the road with a banged up team. You're going up against a number 2 defense, whatever how the Denver have got. Give me Denver as underdogs. They're at home as well. I love this pick.
Yeah, I know. I'll back on that for sure. I think the Broncos are playing well enough, man. They're doing something. Bo Nix on offense he had a slow start. I think all rookie quarterbacks did really, but they're clicking now, and I think I like that pick for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. The Raiders host the Steelers. The Raiders are 3.5-point underdogs. The Steelers are favourites on the road. The Raiders, without Devontae Adams as well, don't fill me with much confidence at all. So yeah, give me the Steelers. Even though they're on the road, I'm going to pick them to win by 4.
Yeah, this feels like a very Steelers game that they'll grind out. I think the defense will suffocate the Raiders. I think they'll kind of just get. I don't know how much of that you heard. It wasn't too much, but
to be fair, we had a lot. Just it's the kind of game that the Steelers don't lose. I think that's what you're getting at. And
exactly.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, mate. So I'm gonna go with them. 2, the Panthers host the Falcons. The Falcons are 6.5-point favourites on the road. Look, even though it's a touchdown almost spread, I can't pick the Panthers at all. Especially with the way the Falcons looked the last couple of weeks. So yeah, give me the Falcons to cover that 6.5-point spread. You went for the Falcons, didn't you?
Yeah.
Okay, so sorry for the technical difficulties, anyone. I'll sort of cover it over in the edit, and sometimes it comes out better than it does anyway. But okay, so there's one final game in the late window. The Cowboys host the Lions. This is the big one. This is the one that Burkhardt and Brady are going to be doing in the late window. The Cowboys are actually home underdog by 3.5 points. It's not often the Cowboys are home underdogs at all because of how hard it is to win at Jerry World, or AT&T Stadium as it's actually called. But with the way the Lions have looked, the last couple of years, and where the Cowboys look this year, I can't pick against the Lions. So give me them to cover.
Oh, sorry. Did you say your pick?
Yeah, I went for the Lions.
Oh man, I'm still cutting out. No, I'm 100% going.
Going for the Lions, yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
So I have no idea what's going on.
That's all right, don't worry about it. We're getting to the end now, so it doesn't really matter. Okay, so I'll set this up. Sunday Night Football. The New York Giants host the Cincinnati Bengals. Now, this is a really must-win game for the Cincinnati Bengals. So I'm going to pick them to cover their 3.5 point favorite odds on the road. Again, it's must win for the Bengals. And again, the Giants on prime time could be frisky. They were against the Cowboys a couple of weeks ago, but the Bengals have to win this game, so I'm picking them. But I'm not confident.
Yeah, the Bengals are a weird team, man. They've probably been like one of the better 1-4 teams we've seen, in recent memory. Play every game pretty close. So yeah, look, I think they'll win. I think they'll cover, but you never know. You never know. I mean, the offense is playing so well as well. It's a shame.
Absolutely. And then we'll finish off with Monday Night Football. The Jets host the Bills. The Bills are the favourite on the road, 3.5 points. The interim head coach bounce is real. It happens. And the way the Bills looked last couple of weeks as well, compared to the start of the season, Josh Allen's getting rushed everywhere. But in these close division games, I don't pick against the Bills because they've dominated the AFC East since the Patriots dynasty yet finished. So yeah, give me the Bills to cover the 3.5 point spread.
Yeah, I mean, 3.5 points. So yeah, more than the field goal. Bills. Will the Jets get their new head coach bounce? I'll be fun. Let's go Jets. Go on.
Yes, nice way to end the podcast. That is. That's a really good way to end the podcast. And you'll see how we did. Obviously, if you watch the games on Sunday, you'll see how we did. But also, we post on social media and everything, so you can see how we did this week as well. And yeah, again, play along. We're in the league, so it'd be nice to see everyone's predictions in the league. After this year. Right now I stand in 15th. We've got a tie for first with 40 points. I'm 11 points behind with 29 points right now. So yeah, I'm a little bit I'm not at the best of weeks. I've got only 3 games right the last couple some of the weeks, but I rebounded last week, and it's always nice to play along with the listeners. So get involved if you haven't. You can still join, and to be fair, some people forget about it as well, so you've still got a chance of doing quite well in the league in week 18 if you start now. So that'll be fun. Feel free to join our pick and pull. Awesome. Well, thank you very much, Andrew, for coming on the podcast. It's been great to have you on. As I said, as a British sports journalist, a great person to look up to. So it's nice to see you doing well over in the States now.
Appreciate you, man. Appreciate you for having me on. And yeah, always open if you ever want to chat or anything. And yeah, we'll see what happens this weekend. Very excited.
Yeah, I'm very, very, very excited too. And that's it for me. Obviously, Andrew, again, thank you for coming on the podcast. I will see you with all the reaction from the second London game.